Codex Encyclopedia, and we're going to talk about who he is and what he does first, and it's okay. So, awesome.
Sorry about that, everybody.
Yeah, it's fine. Technical difficulties happen all the time. So, yeah, let's talk about who you are again.
Okay, so to kind of make that more clear, because I know I was coming a little bit jumbled, and that kind of fits in perfectly with like my music and everything. I guess I had been aware of vaporwave and a lot of the underground music culture since far back as like 2009. I have always been interested in a lot of like not just musical and arts cultures, but also like a lot of what different countries have to offer. And I always tend to keep a distant watch away. I almost feel like an alien, if you will, because of the fact that when I first started listening to vaporwave, it was probably back in 2013, and I didn't actually start reaching out to people until like late 2015, 2016. And some of those experiences were kind of weird. And just like the beginning of our show here, it was just a constant having to either explain or understand what's going on, because the big thing that even got me to finally reach out to people was I was working at a call center for Verizon, and through that job I kept constantly getting told about maybe not working there anymore by the customers. They would tell me like, hey, you should do something else, the way in which you speak, and you kind of keep your feet on the ground. Even though I started out by fucking dropping F-bombs on you and telling you that you're gonna die of this or that, you still managed to kind of keep still with me here. I that's the only thing I would actually feel personally that, yeah, I guess I'll take that from you, because I would see some of my coworkers that would just either be drenched in sweat or be ready to cry or wanting to curse them out too. And for me, it's just like, well, just kind of place yourself on their feet, and feet literally, because the shoes analogy doesn't really quite work if there's some freaks out there that walk barefoot like I used to in college. But yeah, no, through that working and having been there through the, I don't know if you or anybody watching remembers when like the Paris shootings and things started happening this one weekend. I think it was like an Eagles of Death Metal show had kind of been taken hostage somehow or something. I don't know if you knew about that.
I don't know about that. Like, how
Uh,
recent was this?
that was probably like, I think 2015, 2016.
Oh,
But
wow.
I was working in my fucking cubicle in a call center when that happened, and I was talking to people who couldn't even pay their bill, and seeing that happen, it just made vaporwave click finally, honestly, for me. And ironically, in that time was when I had opened up a Twitter for the first time, and I don't know what made some people think that I was making vaporwave and they wanted to make music with me. I think this is just something that vaporwave people are like in general, where they just assume that others are making music and doing things, and that's probably what happened with me. And I thought, fuck, I've never even done this. I actually used to make like folk music before I used to make vaporwave. I was into making like folk music, and it wasn't just ukulele, it was other types
That's
of like
awesome.
instrumentation, but I was really into like making folk music. And yeah, that around that time, it like vaporwave just fully clicked for me, because the way I officially first heard of it was through some like hipster people that I'm not necessarily like too fond of their opinions of things, just because they seem to kind of go by the taste flavor of the week kind of thing. And we all kind of came into it from either like Blink Banshee or Macintosh Plus, or and I first heard of it through Macintosh Plus, and it was the Lisa Frank 420 song. And it was something that I found cool, but it wasn't until all of that stuff accumulated that vaporwave finally really made sense to me personally of what it was, which was
Mm.
living in the constant pursuit of a dream fueled by a nostalgia that doesn't quite resonate with reality, but rather the emotion of what lives within one's heart.
Yeah. Vaporwave is such a beautiful genre. Yeah. And how it like coincides with nostalgia and the aesthetic and like the lifestyle and the just like a community full, and that's awesome that you like you found it through a hipster. I love that. Yeah, I think hipsters are wise beyond their year. Um, so like you wouldn't say that your music is vaporwave. What would you say it is?
I guess I'm really into, and see, this is another thing that interplays with my love of vaporwave is the fact that there's like a lot of elements of things that I think even vaporwave musicians and artists may not be necessarily aware of or conscious of them doing. Like, for example, like there's a certain thing born out of like a lot of like punk DIY culture, which is culture clashing, where I guess a lot of some people can call it pastiches of like putting together collage art before within, actually cutting out newspaper clippings and magazines and doing that, or like later on when like one of my biggest influences, the Clash, they broke up. Mick Jones started like Big Audio Dynamite, which is like another influence of mine that I feel plays somewhat into like the early cells of vaporwave because of the fact that they were using samples. They had a lot of dub production along with flirtations of hip hop while maintaining a punk aesthetic. I think is some of the things that also interplay with things like vaporwave. And one of the things I like to try to like put into some of the work I do is basically that, which is a tribute to the fact that our entire culture as artists has been nothing but reformation of all that has been and it currently is, and trying to reshape what will be as a form of like not necessarily being a saboteur, like sabotaging something, but more so adding a further flavor or something. Like I would say like the best other analogy I could use is like when you're a person that's into cooking and you're like in the kitchen with a family member, a friend or somebody, and you pass by and you just drop like another hint of spice or something, and that's why I with my music try to be subtle about it and don't necessarily try to push it on to people, because it's something that, just like with the works I've been influenced by, I want it to be something where people find it and feel a close connection to it because it wasn't necessarily pushed onto them.
Yeah, I like that and how you go about it. I find your music very like it's a different story every song and it feels different. Like I dance to one song and then I chill, like it feels like ambient, and then it's I love that. Do you feel like it's like a collection of different sounds and stuff?
It definitely is, and actually most of my albums I never actually try to make it a actual like point, but here with you I probably may just well come out with it, but from like my first Power Lunch releases to like my most recent like Hollow Jams re-release, a lot of those albums are kind of saying a similar thing without necessarily touching on the same premise. As far as like, for example, Monotophobia is kind of a self-satirization of myself as a person, and also what a lot of you all are, and what I think a lot of us are on the internet, which is that we all have this constant irony of feeling like maybe we're either so unique, but yet we feel so alone, and yet we have all these people we relate to, and we don't necessarily come to want to face up to the fact that what makes us feel this way is the alienation of maybe, attacking our own personal feelings in that kind of personal way. And with every track, as far as like in every album, it's just either me trying to refocus that kind of idea or emotion, or more so like feeling the need to tell people that as serious as things get, at the same time there's a need for people to kind of just step back and just laugh at themselves, and not for the sake of like, oh, it's edgy to laugh at yourself, but more so like having that humility to understand that you're making mistakes while you're trying to figure yourself out can maybe give a chance for others to make those mistakes without having people come to a quick judgment of others,
That's so deep. I love that. That just...
Thank you.
That makes me feel better. Just like everything you said, it's like, yeah.
I really appreciate that. I mean, for example, like, there's a lot of me constantly making fun of the fact that I'm always in love, but I'm never actually in love, and it is in general too. Like, there's the constant, like, melancholic sense that a lot of people in this vaporwave community, I feel, tend to have, but not want to be, like... Now, I'm not saying up front with it, but I think more of, like, putting it on your sleeve as a personal sense, rather than it being like you taking, like, okay, this is like a Wong Kar-wai film that I saw, like Chungking Express, and the melancholy within that, I'll place it onto how I'm feeling. And I think, with what I was saying previously, a lot of my albums kind of are... They're kind of like a constant conceptual idea that's continuously going, but it's not something that's coherent in the sense of like a story being told. More so like, again, I'm just trying to find different ways of sharing my own feelings while trying to also tell the stories of some of you that I talk to, and maybe finding a way that I can put that into a song format, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wanted to ask you about Words That End in April, and like what was the process, and like what was the mindset of you making that album?
Well, I thought that something bad was going to happen to me, or a lot of us.
Oh, wow.
Just because, not being alarmist, but like I have that album, I made it about a friend that she's now currently in China, and I met her here in Oregon, where I currently live in. And in January, she started telling me about a lot of the pandemic stuff that was happening in China. And like, for me already, it's been close to like about a year since I kind of started staying home and not going out, because of the fact that she was telling me, hey, things in China are not really looking good. Like, they're locking people at home. Like, they're telling them to stay home because things are not looking good, and she didn't necessarily want to go back. And the place where she lives is really ironic, and I mean to the full extent of the word, because she lives 2 hours away from Wuhan, but she also is the place where, like, I guess it was the most securest, because they don't even let really, like, citizens necessarily normally go there. I think she was telling me something about, like, because, like, where she comes from is such, like, for vegetation and like planting and stuff like that, they just kind of only make it to where those people can kind of go and come. Because even she was telling me, like, heavy commerce vehicles can't necessarily get to where she lives. They have to kind of take smaller vehicles and then make trips there and forth to like pack things like that.
Wow.
But yeah, so she was like, she was safe, but at the same time she was also 2 hours away from right where it broke out. So it was
that's
kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And I guess I kept looking at the news around that time, and I just kept hearing about how April was basically going to be what today is kind of for most people, where like the numbers are really high. And there was also a lot of talk still with like the heavy militaristic movements that were happening, not just in our country but in other countries as well. And I just thought, like, I think along that time the what's it called, the doomsday clock or whatever shit it is. They
Mm-hmm.
moved it from like seconds, where we're closer to midnight. So I I couldn't get any sleep either. So what I ended up doing was I dug through a bunch of music that I felt gave a sense to me of living in a delusion while feeling like the world is on kind of fire, kind of feeling. Because I think a lot of people are always quick to, again, and this is by no means a form of apology for those that have more than us, but at the same time, people again aren't willing to see how much, like Nero, we're also dancing while the village is on fire, and everything's happening. It's not just the rich people, you know? And that's one of the things as to where my album was sort of being catered towards as well. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's why there's like a bit of like the sarcasm of like the song that kind of flirts with the idea of like a girl looking for a guy and things like that. Because
Mm-hmm.
around that time, I was also watching segments about online dating, and all of this just felt really strange that all of this was happening at the same time to me. Maybe it's because I wasn't getting any sleep, and to summarize it all up, like, I put this together because I wanted to get sleep, because I didn't want to fucking die with just those ideas in my head if I was to like end up getting sick, which I guess I still can. And it
Because of
kind of
the.
ties in with why I ended up doing this show too.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's like interesting. That's interesting that like your friend, you had a friend in China who was like literally close by to the whole thing, and like the fear of like the virus, and that pushed you to like create. I love hearing those stories where it's like you take this one thing that, that's happening in your like life, and you instead like embrace in a way that like helps you create and like helps with the creative flow. That's like super interesting and cool. Um, wow. How did you meet this person in China? I'm kind of interested.
Well, she was coming to school here in the university in
Mhm.
Eugene, and that's where I live here in Oregon. And
Mhm.
long story short is that Genesis and I, you know, being my partner, Sega Octopus, hey, in the chat, I know you're watching. Um,
Sega.
her, her and I have always found it that, because her and I met through a dating site like years ago. We found that when we met under the first notion that we were looking for artists, and that's kind of how we kept it up. And the way that I met her was that I did it. She had swiped right on the fucking Tinder, and I only swiped right too because I never saw any pictures of her. It was just memes. It was the most ridiculous ass memes ever, and they were hilarious. And
No
just to
way.
see somebody on Tinder sharing that shit and just being really ridiculous, I don't know, whatever. I didn't think anything of it, and that was the whole like point for
Mhm.
me, to meet just a super ridiculous person. And when I guess we both ended up matching, I always tell her this, that she ended up kind of serenading me with like the most like noisily, like most awfully recorded like Chinese Ramones punk band thing.
Oh
And it
my
was awesome
god.
because we kept talking like that for like days to weeks without us actually knowing who the other was. But then when we actually ended up talking and knowing like how she looked and everything, she ended up kind of disclosing that she was doing the same thing as I was doing, that she was just trying to meet other artists or people interested in the arts. And, you know, she
Mhm.
had to go about it this way because of the fact that she's Asian, and how she felt that she was just really either fetishized or objectified
Mhm.
by either men or women. And she just wanted to see that I was just ridiculous too. And that was kind of nice that we vibed on that. And our friendship became very, very strong from that. Like, I, to this day, like, you know, had the pandemic not really have happened, she's a person that she directs and makes her own films and does things. And
Wow,
we're looking to maybe collaborate one day soon. And one of the things about you know, I guess making connections with people, I found it is that there always has to be like a sense of vulnerability to it, and like, you know, because even here in Vaporwave, I think like a lot of the people I've really connected with, I could see myself have made that similar type of connection, like how I met her, and I don't know, this isn't necessarily a thing for me to talk about, like being non-binary or pansexual, but because of that, like that's where I go back to the constant feeling that I'm always in love. It's just more of like the passion I feel coming from people, and she had to have gotten a bit of a long-winded answer because of the fact that, you know, a lot of the stereotypes that we as people give on each other, she is one of those people that I can personally say she always like gives a sense that we shouldn't come quick to judge anybody because of the fact of how, not even of how she is, but even the fact that she was a person I met coming from abroad and doing school and everything, and yet, you know, I'm a college fucking dropout who is multiracial, like, and I feel like I'm a pretty uneducated, and I don't think I'm that attractive and everything, yet through all that we managed to kind of put all no, you're too kind. No,
I literally like before we even got on here, like I was admiring you. Like you are extremely attractive. I just want to say that. But
well, thank you. And Enrel watching, you know, he knows that he's the one that still tickles my heart the most and the softest. He's my personal. He's the personal vaporwave baby Yoda of all of us. I can say that for sure. Probably.
I'm just gonna say right here in front of all you guys, Codex Manny is literally the reason me and Nathan got together. Literally, I would have never met Nathan otherwise. So
you know,
sight sounds and conversations.
And that's. The matchmaker, right? But no, you know, I heard that for the longest time, and yet, you know, I always kept a distance from you. I actually got to say this live. I didn't mention it before because I wanted to save this for now, but I've always admired like what you do too. Like, you know, how you just kind of threw yourself into doing it. I really resonate with that. You know, like it feels like a very like punk kind of thing. I'm very akin to like the punk heart, you know, in a sense, and to kind of have the DIY aesthetic continue now in Vaporwave through the means of having like live stream events and through having like things like shows in this format and seeing you do it, but to also hear you that like, dude, okay, Enril and Will, like before I went to like Comic-Con, I'm wanting to go to Comic-Con, that's why I'm thinking about that shit.
Oh my god, I was
but anyways, when I went to Econ too, and I saw them there, I honestly went there only, and I've never actually said this like in a big space, but I went there just because I wanted a lot of people that I know today to kind of meet me personally and for them to talk to me because of like certain things behind the scenes to which I felt that maybe they had a wrong understanding of me. And they were like, Will and Nathan were two of the people of which I thought that they had something like that with me, like where they were like, I think this motherfucker's like some incel or he's some fucking whatever person, and like for me, like no, and I'm bringing this up just because also like as a whole in this community, I feel like even with Rosewood and a lot of things like that I'm associated with, I feel like sometimes I feel like I maybe come off as stuck up or closed off and everything, and for me, a lot of the time it's just like, I guess I'm just too self-conscious of not wanting to seem like, whether it's the show that I'm doing or anything, like it's like, oh, it's me, like, you know, I just kind of toss the ideas out to people that, hey, we're having a new show or we're doing things for people to promote themselves, but I also try to walk as fine a line as I can to make sure that It's not like, hey, it's the many Codex thing. Like with Codex Encyclopedia thing, just kind of I came up with that kind of whole thing because the way that my show is also inspired by is like late night talk shows, and they have the names of the hosts, and that's really the only reason I really did that. But you know, going back to like going to econ and like meeting like Enril and like fucking Will, like it's just like, I don't know, like again, for me it's just a continuous trying to make sure that we all have like a proper form of like understanding with one another, because my bigger end goal towards all this is for the arts internationally to have a better platform where they can be utilized correctly as I think they should. And that's kind of, again, my big, I guess if I was to connect this to like a Star Trek MO, like my big thing is just to try to fucking find an actual unity without trying to make people compromise their bullshit. And I'm sorry if it becomes as disrespectful, but I have a lot of bullshit beliefs. We all have bullshit beliefs that react to other people's beliefs or their realities, and that's kind of where I want people to look at the bigger thing of where we're all really more so like akin than in line, you know?
Of course, and you're totally right. We all kind of have bullshit beliefs, but that's all right. That's, you know, that's part of growth and like who you are as a person. It's like we're all unique, we're all different.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think that's one of the things that, again, with the show and what I do is just my personal operation too with that, which is like to find a way for, you know, people to really kind of just loosen up a bit.
Yeah. Well, Enrail says in chat, hello, me and Will have always thought you were the coolest guy, Manny. And he really does.
You guys are sweet. I
mean,
always thought you guys were cooler.
Behind closed doors, Nathan always like talks like the nicest things about you. So he loves you.
That's sweet. I love him too. Like even Genesis, like I'm always with Genesis here, I'm always making jokes because she'll like bring you up, or she'll be like, oh, like Molo said this, or like Nathan posted this, and I'll just be like, oh, don't even tell me, because like Molo's just off there like just enjoying Nathan while I'm over here like social distancing and shit.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We're also like moving in together, which is like crazy.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, anyways, enough about me. I wanted to ask like what so like you mentioned earlier that you started Sight, Sounds, and Conversations because of like, you know, the situation that is happening with like the pandemic, and that was like one of the factors. Like, what else compelled you to start it, and like what was your inspiration?
George Floyd in like in Black History Month right now, it's kind of like another thing that I guess makes this answer appropriate. But like when the George Floyd murder happened, and there was a lot of different protests and a lot of different events happening around the country during this pandemic. Here in my town, it was no different. There were people here doing that, and I saw online that there were local places putting together these groups of people saying, hey, we're going to go out there and do this for George Floyd, and we're going to do this. And being that I didn't see like a lot of like Latin people posting stuff, and I'm Latin, I also went to school for journalism. I thought that it was a duty of mine as a human and as a person that also went to school for something predominantly, you know, associated with writing, that I needed to offer some of my assistance. And I just went online and I said, look, I am a person that attended school for journalism, and I also kind of have like some studies in anthropology. This isn't really like a form of like application, but I'm also bilingual and I'm Latin. So if there's anybody that has an interest for me to translate anything for the Latin community, as of like when there's going to be an actual, you know, event or something, how do we tell the Latin community that may not read English or understand it fully to maybe wear masks, or where to meet, or what we need to do to be safe at these events? Because I was also saying, hey, I have physical ailments that make it hard for me to actually be out there, but even through a pandemic I would have kind of gone out there, you know. And long story short, after all that, I posted something along those lines. I had my post taken down and I made a big fuss about it. And long story short, from that, I also I'm not a big person of like paranoia or conspiracy, but I think that they were just basically trying to make that group as an ends means for police and law enforcement here to meet and to see the protesters there and to arrest people. So they weren't interested in me trying to offer help, I felt. And along with that, I again come from a really punk kind of heart, where like one of my big influences is Joe Strummer of the Clash, and there's a line that says, you know, when I get aggression I give it 2 times back, or something along those lines. And for me, I was thinking, what can I do? Can I make a big fuzz about this and just go online and say, hey, I got silenced and this is bullshit, or this or that, and or what do I do? And I, along, you know, that time, I started seeing that a lot of people in this vaporwave community were putting out albums or doing live stream events, like Rosewood. Anybody from Rosewood watching, like, you guys would play a big role into me doing this show, just because of the fact too that they were putting together these like fundraising events, and some of other artists that were also selling records or some of their albums digitally, physically, and they were trying to donate some of those proceeds to, whether it be George Floyd or like the pandemic. And I just from that gathered what the best thing I could do was just put this idea together, which was to put an event that could maybe raise some money and attention, and also give people an experience that would resemble that of not a music event, but more of a programming block, the same way that I've always kind of been inspired by growing up, whether it be through Adult Swim or MTV, but also throwing in like elements of like Mr. Rogers and like, you know, elements of like, I guess even like that stupid fucking Tim and Eric sketch where they're like raising muscles for bones kind of thing, and they're doing like this fundraising event. I just wanted to do something where people could have fun, but also know that there's things going on, you know. I think I wanted to play that middle role of that, and I guess through that, people really ended up enjoying it, and I've continued doing it since.
Yeah, I think it's one of like my favorite streams of like anything that came out. All the streams. Sorry, I'm having a hard time like expressing myself. Fine. But like out of all the streams, yours is like my favorite, and I feel closest to that, like what you have set up and what you have done and like everything that you have brought to the table. I like the fact that you also incorporate art and artists. Like you had a gallery. And you know, like, I've seen a lot of people who, I've seen earlier on, when streamings, when URL shows were, like, becoming more and more of a thing, and how visual artists were feeling, like, less represented than the musician. And it's like, you, like, also incorporate, like, no, artists are important, too, and all that stuff. And you also make it funny and scary, and it's like, it's a variety show. It's awesome. Seriously, I praise everything that you do. And like, how did it, like, the whole gallery thing, that's so cool. Like, what made you think, like, this is a good idea, too? Like, I love that.
Well, I think that visual artists are really underrepresented, even as much as that, you know, there may be people that, because I myself, I'm not a person that's guiltless from that. There's been like past shows that there's been people, like, for example, I think it was one of the first episodes, one of our viewers right now, Sleep Pattern, which I love you, by the way, dude. He was involved in it, and I felt like such a fucking asshole because he was like, hey dude, I was involved in that. I was like, oh man, I didn't see that. And that's just because I'm putting all these things together, not because it's like, no, he just did the visuals, he doesn't matter. But because I made that mistake, I felt so bad about something like I could do like that, that I care about this, that I think that the next best thing was do something where I could pay a form of showcase to people that may not be doing the visuals with a set, but more so people that have either done cover art or people that can do cover art and things of that nature. Because right now that the pandemic's going on, there's not art shows going on, and not a lot of people may have already gone on or gone to them, but because of the fact that, you know, not because thanks to me, but because of maybe me putting this together, it could maybe incentivize or give people a notion that there used to be this kind of thing before, where there would be somebody to play either a musical set of with their band, or to play you know, just a DJ set with just some random music that coincides with the artwork that's being presented. And my co-creator, who I'm not sure if he's watching right now, but Dominic Vega, he goes by Always in the Room if he's here watching. But I originally thought that he was just going to do something nice, where he was going to put a nice little texture and put a layer for the pictures to be presented on and just do it like a slideshow. He went out of his way and actually rendered up an entire room for us to kind of actually put up these things and to put up their artwork to make it look like an actual art space. So from there, it just kind of snowballs. And the big idea, going back to your original question, was that I think that it's important for these type of artists to also get as much exposure as the ones that make actual like moving visuals, or the people that make music to get, because of the fact that, you know, it's a pandemic, and I know that people are making music, but I'm also sure that a lot of other illustrators and visual artists in this community that can probably do a cover art would probably like a little bit of a freer space for them to maybe do other things personally, and to maybe give a little more limelight to other people. So that's again another reason too why that idea kind of florated and became what ended up becoming.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that you incorporate that. I really haven't seen anyone else do it, so that's like, I commend you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I also want to know how you like get everyone like to be involved and stuff. Like, do you have like a set list of people you want on the show, or are you just like, you know, it's like whoever?
Well, the way that I basically go about putting the shows together is every single month while I'm working on an episode, I start thinking of what the next concept or the next idea or theme I'd like for the next episode. Because for people that may not necessarily watch the episode and like all of them by their entirety or anything, but for those that do, I have actually started placing a storyline into the show since like the first episode, not the first stream, but the first episode that we did. I think it was in September. Since we started doing it then, I started incorporating more of a linear type of idea into the show, and every single episode has a theme more or less. But as I'm working on that, I just spend, and this is kind of goes into play with why I'm also not necessarily online as much, but I also spend a lot of my time listening to people that I like to reach out to, because I think their music may play some form of element of relevance to the upcoming theme of the next episode. And with that, I reach out to those, but when some of them are not available, like some upcoming guests that we will have probably in April and May, I also offer them that further down of timeline, because I still feel that their work can be relevant somewhat to what the upcoming episodes will be. But it's never just a draw of the hat for me, or at least on the end of how I try to curate the show. It always has a certain sense to it, and it more or less, again, the main also other operative of the show is to blur the line enough for where people can watch a show and maybe not necessarily be into noise or be into future funk or bedroom pop, hyper pop, whatever these things that I've had on, but for them to see that these things blend enough together where you could maybe give them a chance and see where they're just as important or kind of relevant as the other things that you may be doing or are interested in. And that's why I also went about making sure that from the beginning, I always have told people the show's fueled by vaporwave, but mainly working by the mechanics of like internet culture.
Wow. Yeah. I really loved your last episode with like the guy in the stick. I forgot his name. Do you remember? He was. It was so fucking amazing.
Matthias Rosian. Yeah.
Oh, so fucking phenomenal. I have never heard music like that before in my life, and I was just like, I was so tuned in. I was like, this is amazing. I can't believe this is like that. He's literally using this like, stick to make music, and it sounds dark, and it was like my brain senses, like amazing, phenomenal. And I love that, like, I've never heard of that kind of music. I literally, like, I've never even heard of music like that. And you brought that to, like, someone like me. Like, that's, like, so cool that, like, there will be people who are watching who have never heard, like, this music. And you kind of just, like, oh, here. Like, yo, check it out, dude. Like, that's cool.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
So, like, you have, like, a set, like a storyline, basically, and with all your episodes. And that's cool. What is, like, would you like to describe it? Like, what we have? What you have going on? Like, the whole...
Well, it's basically the same thing with what I'm doing musically. I think that... And this is probably the first place where I really fully come out with it and everything. And maybe some people can say, don't say how the entire sausage is made, but I don't think like giving away idea of what the inspiration behind the entire process is. But for anybody that has me on Facebook or like has me on most media, I'm basically playing a version of me. In the show already, I'm expounding on that even more than what I was doing musically, which is, again, using myself to make fun of the fact that all of us as artists constantly try to recreate or reimagine or remake themselves in all these formats and ways, but at the end of the day, we're all just kind of influenced by one another, and we're just made out of others' work as well. And it's not to say that we're all blank slates. There is a sense of originality to what we do, but I think that originality is only always shown and executed well when we're able to show the love of those things that have made us into what we're kind of making and what we're working on. For example, I think some of the people that do it well musically in vaporwave are people like, for example, like Mesh, or maybe like people like Telepath, who they are able to work on their music and their craft as an artist overall well into the point where they have melded an identity that it seems solely and fully original, but at the same time still interplaced with a lot of notions that have already existed, whether it be with what influences them or whether it be with the concept of which they're approaching their overall work. But the thing that makes it that much more original is that you can see that there's a lot of love, personal love, that has gone into it. It's not just like, I guess like the Lord of the Rings meme where it says one just doesn't do this kind of thing. I guess that's kind of the thing that I really respond and react to, and that's what makes me constantly kind of work towards that as well with what I do in the show. And to summarize that question for you, the concept again is for all of us to know that we're again supposed to be trapeze artists of like working and walking a middle balance of what we ourselves are and what we want to project, while also giving a certain sense of, again, freedom for the viewer or whoever is taking in these works to understand who is the person that's kind of making them at that surface level. And if somebody cares enough, like a lot of the people in this community have, I talk to them behind the scenes, and I feel they kind of have come to know me more personally through that means and that ends. And that's why with the show as well, I add the sense of interview, so the viewers get their taste only of who these people may be. And if you care enough and you want to know these people personally, then you're gonna search for them.
Yes,
but
that's what I love. I love that. It's like you get to know who they are. So like, I've never also seen that happen before, like where you have like a set and then an interview afterwards. And as a person, like I've said this before, as someone who's like a huge fan of like many things, I love like getting to know people on a deeper like personal level. So that's what I love that you incorporate, because that's what I love to see, and I'm sure there are people who love to see like other people just like me as a huge fucking fan. Like I want to hear what these people are thinking in their head. They're musical geniuses, you know? Like, are they just...
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah. One thing, if you guys watching, because this is more... No, you're fine. This is more addressed to you viewers than it is to Molo. We're coming pretty close to, and I don't mean to hijack your show here, but we're coming close to the mid-show here. She's been a strong sport. If you guys been hearing her coughs and everything, we're both kind of working on a bit of an overdrive here. So let's kind of give like a bit of a 5-second little break here, if you guys will, to let her catch herself, me as well, and we'll kind of just continue the conversation if you guys don't mind. If you guys are interested enough for it, behind me here I have a bunch of stuff that I'm willing to show off to some of you interested later on during the questionnaire portion. But till then, you know, I gotta pull a Marjorie Taylor Greene and release my own Kraken because I've been drinking. So I hope you don't mind, Molo. I'm sorry about this.
Oh yeah, no problem. I have a screen for this.
But I'll be right back for a quick second. Thank you.
All right, love you. Love me.
Right on. Thank you all for waiting.
All right, we're back.
Hello. How are you all? I hope it wasn't too long.
No, it wasn't long at all. It was like 5 seconds.
I hope not, because I counted when I washed my hands.
Oh yeah, I don't know. It wasn't that long. It was not that long.
But then again, like, it's not like, you know, my genitalia has like feet and arms and walks off on its own. And when I'm just gonna stop there.
Yeah, it's fine.
But
good. How is it living with Sega Octopus? I really like. I think she's a wonderful person.
You know, I really appreciate you asking that, and that's a great question. Just because, you know, and I'll say this right here: we have a relationship, partnership that we always feel like it's misunderstood because people go more by like sexual, romantic relation kind of thing. But our relationship since the beginning started off as, again, we entered into our friendship and everything with the idea of wanting to be, like, even to this day we're working on maybe doing a graphic novel or a comic together at some point down the line, and we like to just offer each other enough freedom. But one thing with her is that we're constantly also challenging one another too, and that's to the full extent of the word and the idea, you know, because she's the first person I've ever really been in a relationship, partnership of this sort with, where they've allowed me the actual time to work on my physical ailments, you know, and to like figure them out, because I've been dealing with some of this stuff since I was like about 12 years old. You know, I'm turning 30 this year, and like it's been a while, and I've only like been in a relationship kind of partnership with her for about, you know, close to 5 years now. But during this entire time, it's been, I would say, a really healthy challenge for us to continue to be in a relationship partnership, and it's one that I feel that most people in relationships should kind of look and want to have and be towards, in a sense, just because of the fact that we both kind of are each other's like lesser, you know, like weaker parts of ourselves, so we kind of get to keep each other in check in that sort of format and way, you know, like thanks to her, she constantly has me noticing if I'm maybe being, you know, not vulnerable, but, you know, at least open enough to where I can kind of see and feel where I may come across as like closed off. And with her, I constantly want to always empower her to have the same kind of courage to do whatever she does, like with her comics, and she does her own you know, she's been doing a lot of sprite work and 8-bit stuff, and
yeah, she's very
but
talented.
at the same time, we also it wasn't until the show recently where we kind of started being more upfront about us working together, just because we also tend to realize that there's a lot of people that tend to think that because one is in a relationship with somebody else in this community, that they're basically just doing it as a form of like power grab type of thing, of like, oh yeah, we're kind of like dick riding off each other kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is kind of a reason why we kind of tend to keep each other at a form of like, I guess, respectable distance out in the open in that regard, as far as us working together or her doing anything. But she's always just constantly working on something, a lot more than me, I would even say. She's one of the things that behind the scenes and sights and sounds, when it comes to like what you would say, like the people working either the boom, you know, the operating the mic or the camera, or like even the down to how the show's coming in live, like that's all pretty much like Genesis. And I'm always thankful for her with that. And like even with some of the cover art, most of it is done by her. You know, the only thing that she pretty much works on that I have a part to do is like I just give her the idea of what like my cover art is going to be or what I want it to be, and she works off of those ideas. But I give her enough of the free space. On other things, I mean, I guess like I'm the clean and organized one. You know, she's more messy than I am. You know, she watches and is more open to just any anime. As me, I'm just more of a snob. We kind of have those kind of differences, but she is a really fun person to say that if I had to choose who to be in the pandemic with and I didn't actually have a choice, to have and be with Genesis is like more than enough than like a gift. Like, you know, our relationship, as much as I love her, she always still feels like one of my best friends, foremost and first, you know.
That's so precious. I love that. Aww. What is your favorite anime, by the way? Talking about anime. I love it.
Well, I have a tattoo of it.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Show it off. What is that?
Yeah, it's Fully Cooley.
Fully Cooley. You know that's James Webster's favorite anime?
I did not really know that.
Yeah, he said it in the DDS fan club Discord.
Oh, I'm not in there,
cool.
so that's probably why.
Yeah. That's so fucking cool. That's dope. I love that. I have not yet like seen it fully, but I've seen like a couple episodes, and it's fucking crazy like off the bat. I love that. I need to finish.
Yeah, no. When that show first came out, I was in 7th grade, and it was just a really fucking like important time for me to have come across that show, just because of how like the character in the first season, how he is, and I don't want to give too much away, but I really sort of identified with that fucking kid as when I was growing up. But as I started getting older, I started realizing more things about myself personally. And I think, long story short, the first season, if you really see it as that, I think it's just a coming of age story and trying to tell people how nothing makes sense growing up, you know, and that's one of the things that I resonate, that even to this day as an adult, nothing makes fucking sense, and it's okay, I guess, you know, like I can't fucking control that. Nothing makes sense outside of my control.
Yeah, literally, like I just don't understand. Like the world is crazy. And we're just going through so many, like, historical moments now. It's like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, no. And, like, one thing that I found that, like, is the most funny and like, not haha, but, like, the most ironic in all of this is the fact that I think a lot of issues that are caused, like, in the bigger spectacle of the world are mainly sort of less made and kind of enacted by people who just more or less have these personal agendas, but they're all kind of mired in like these personal insecurities. And like even that, people that believe in some of these movements, whether they be, and I don't mean to say it on an actual literal right or left sense, but whether they think, oh, I'm a right or leftist person, a lot of them also are fucking also just drenched in all this irony. Like, you know, I mean, I don't mean to get too political here, but like to hear all of these movements about talking about children and the safety of children and all of this, and to see that there's a lot of things that continue to be done in this country or just in general that really do affect children, and for those very same people to not give a fuck about it is one of the things where like, so it's really about the children, right? It's not about you just being a fundamentalist believer or something you're being told to make you think this is an enemy that I have, and therefore they're hurting our children and they're doing this, and you're not going to see how you're actually affecting the children as well. If you really care for the children that much. It's the same thing where like I hear about all these stories about human trafficking, but nobody bats an eye to certain countries that have a bad grade when it comes to human trafficking because they're taking in prostitutes from Mexico or they're taking in things like that, you know? So like that's kind of some of the things that I also feel like in our art community I try to have play with what I do within our show, which is to, you know, I have people that are not necessarily like law enforcement lenient, but they're probably not necessarily for drugs being legal, and I have people that aren't necessarily for the police, and I don't feel the need to necessarily say like, hey, the views and opinions reflected on this show do not, because it's like, this is their show. If they want to fucking do that, that's fine. And if people stick around long enough to see that the show's kind of contradicting itself in ways, and for them not to take a second to step back and being like, oh, he's just giving all of these people a kind of a platform for them to either make their points or for them to make asses of themselves. It's really what the artist is up to doing for themselves. I'm trying to be like as much as good a host as I can, but if they have something that people are not going to agree with, then people are not going to agree with. That's not my job personally. For me, unless they're abruptly straight out racist, which I don't know how they could work with me because I'm like not straight and I'm not white. But
Yeah.
unless they have something else like that, like, they have their full on time to do whatever they like on that. And that's one of the things where, like, I think coming into the arts community, I really had, like, not just for me but a lot of us, to start kind of opening up the dialogue more of, like, we can't just continue to fucking keep canceling people, like, even whether it's in the underground or whether it's in the mainstream, because I think a lot of people are straight out fucking hypocrites. I really think that people are hypocrites. Like, I think that for us to cancel and say, like, any name of people that we want to continuously cancel, that I may not like some of the fuckers, mind you, but for us to go ahead and say, like, okay, this person needs to be canceled because they're assholes just in general. They said this hurtful thing, but there's people that we like that say shit constantly and continuously that we're like, okay, that's, it's one of the things that I think all of us are kind of hypocrites on.
Yeah, but I also feel like canceling people does nothing, because sometimes people who are canceled become popular. Like, that's
yeah, no,
like, what the
true.
fuck? Like, that was like literally the opposite of what people wanted to happen. And it's like, oh shit, now they have a platform because they were canceled. And it's like, shit, okay.
Yeah, no,
it doesn't work.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's my point exactly, which is why I'm like, I think people, like, with my show, I try to, mind you, on most interviews, I always tell them, hey, if you have any personal, like, vendetta against anybody or anything, please don't bring it up on the show. This is not for that. But I also tell them, hey, depending on what you're wanting or bring up, that's kind of on you. I always ask, what do you want me to not bring up that may be too personal for you, or what do you just not want the interviews to go towards? But for me, that's kind of another thing as to why I also tend to stay away from, like, talking to so many people in this community too, as much as I may want to, because there's been vapor drama that goes on, and I still talk to certain people that are beefing with one another, and I haven't stopped talking to either one of them, and I just feel like I'm not self-conscious, but I'm more concerned about them thinking that I'm way too neutral. And for me, sometimes it's like, yo, if I really think that one of you guys is right and wrong, I'll take a side. But if I'm not taking a side, you guys can go fucking fight on your own there. I'm not gonna, like, I don't know the fucking full stats of somebody's fucking fights, and I don't know why, who said this or why they said what, and until I see that somebody says something straight out that I'm like, there's no explaining or excusing, that's when I'll pick a side. But it's also been, again, that has also continued to be a reason why I've kind of continue to keep a distance in the overall community, whether it be in Rosewood or whether it be, like, just in the bigger aspect, because, again, I know that there's people that, whether it be last year or before, they had beef or something, and I don't ever want them to feel like I'm a fucking mole for anybody. Like, I'm not gonna go and pass your fucking messages or your fucking, like, chit chat around. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in making all of you guys be as beautiful artists as you fucking can be. Till you guys are straight out pieces of shit, then I'll work on finding a way to making sure people don't really like you guys. But that's different.
Yeah, I try to avoid, like, vapor drama. Honestly, I feel like
me too.
The people that I've surrounded myself with, like, it gives me a good, like, image of, like, what vaporwave is, and I just ignore the other aspects. Like, they don't exist to me. Like, I've heard that there are, like, bad people in the vaporwave, like, community, but I've never interacted with them, so they don't exist. I mean, unless it's, like, they're hurting people, then I'll be like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm in a good space. That's where I'm trying to get at. And I love that.
So am I.
Yeah. And, getting into other people's drama is, like, pointless. And I totally agree with the way you, deal with that. It's like, there are people who will show you kindness, and, like, your friend might be like, oh, like, they were mean to me once, and you're like, well, they've been good to me, so, like, how are you supposed to react towards those situations? So it's like, it's not like a neutral thing. It's like, well, I don't want to be involved. I don't know. Yeah.
So
this is a cool conversation. So If anyone wants to like ask questions, go right ahead. Just go right ahead and ask some questions. Ask Codex whatever you want. While that's happening, what is your highest recommendation for an album? Like, what is your favorite album of all time that you would recommend to everyone here?
That is a hard question. You have probably asked the hardest question I've been asked my entire life. Well, I've been wanting to do and get back into doing on my own personal Twitch channel when I'm not doing like sights and sounds, me sharing records, because I get into collecting. Besides just vaporwave tapes, I collect music of all types and formats, but I predominantly started by collecting music that's been influential to me. But I guess, okay, if I may start with one record and one record only, let me just go ahead and quickly get it.
Yes.
It is probably this. Hold on. So
Awesome.
I went and grabbed a couple things, and I guess to answer Groovy's question is, I think one of the biggest reasons that people listen to music is because us as humans, we have an innate nature to find patterns in everything and to also find pleasure in things. And I think that one of the best things that makes those two things really marry each other in a really great blended way is music. I think through music you can find the patterns of, whether it be rhythm, emotion, concept, theme, whatever have you, and you also get to interlace it very well with that previous thing of which I spoke of. And that's kind of what goes along with some of the things that I'm going to show here with records.
Yay.
Which is one of my first influential things here is like 20 Jazz Funk Greats by Throbbing Gristle, which is kind of a meme right now. But, this album is pretty much...
What year is that from?
This is, I believe, from 1979 or 77. I believe it's around that era. Industrial, but they were one of the first artists to really start implementing samples into their music and the way that they're utilizing it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, and another thing that I really feel is important from that album and that work is that it teaches people that you don't always have to be so classically trained to the point where you should be worried about where you're fucking recording. It just go and do it, and that's the thing I like about this album, that it really represents that. Another album is, of course, which is now having its 20th year anniversary, is the first Gorillaz album.
Gorillaz.
Yeah, they're my biggest influence, besides like Throbbing Gristle, and as far as anything that I do, their whole concept, and I mean Jamie Hewlett and Damon Albarn of the project, is they've pretty much have taken everything of which they've been influenced by, kind of like me, and they've applied it to this concept, this project of Gorillaz, and they're representing and repackaging that in a manufactured way, where most people constantly say, oh, this thing's manufactured, it's fake, it's not worth checking out. But their project is ironic, where it's like, yeah, we know it is, but you're still enjoying it because we're putting like JPEG Mafia together with like a Japanese pop punk band like Chai, or we're putting Elton John and shit like that. And while we're doing that in our videos, we reference movies and all this. So it's like, it's kind of like a nice challenge for those that like art to kind of look at all these things that have gone into making a thing like Gorillaz, and it shows it on their sleeve. And that's one of the things that I feel also plays into my work as a, as a person as well. My next thing to show off is probably one of the, like, obvious.
I'll try living like this.
Yeah. This is the orange milk pressing for anybody that cares. It's not the 100%. So.
Oh, so it's like one of those.
It's the first release they put out, yeah.
Yeah, that might cost a lot of money on Discogs.
It may, but I'm not looking to sell anytime soon.
Yeah.
These things. That album is pretty self-explanatory for anybody in vaporwave, Like, it's just something that, again, mixes a lot of the things that I've put into my work as well, which is, again, put enough of your emotion, but also be enough of a shit poster to make people realize you're not trying to make people think you're so much deeper than everybody else, It's just you putting your emotions out and letting people know that you're a dumbass too.
Yeah.
And I'm not calling James and Tech dumbasses. They're sweethearts, but I'm just saying they walk that fine line, like, between being funny and then being like completely kind of serious.
Oh yeah, especially James.
Yeah.
Like, Tech, I don't even know if he's ever serious, but James, like, yeah.
Yeah, no.
Tech is borderline cringe alert, but that's fine. Alright. I want you to answer this, because I think it's sweet. Enrel asks, Manny, how are you so talented and handsome?
I don't really think I'm that talented and handsome, but if you think so, it's probably because, your taste isn't as sophisticated as the mainstreams are. And I do thank you for being able to look over my personal and psychological blemishes, and you're quite beautiful yourself.
Sega Octopus asks, favorite shirt?
Oh, come on, you live with me, but I mean, that's kind of hard. I wear the same, 4-3 shirts all this fucking time. I have, a closet full of, shirts. I could probably wear a different shirt for months, honestly, but I'd still wear the same 4 shirts. And I guess I recently, this shirt, just because I just kind of got it. It's, a coil shirt, but I don't really have a favorite shirt. They're all my favorite shirts.
Your fit is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. Another album that I really like too that I was gonna show in this is Cibomato. This is a band from the 90s. This album is one of my favorite albums of all time. I actually went out of my way and paid for this repressing of it for $50, I believe, on Discogs, but it's worth it for me because this band, they incorporate a lot of hip hop and a lot of lounge type music, as well as a lot of samples. It's very experimental, and I think it's another one of the silent heroes that, for me, I think it would probably portray vaporwave into what it kind of is. And it has this nice little orange kind of look to it. It's a nice album. It's really if you're a person that doesn't like to be kind of told messaging through their music, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, because it's really heavily not in your face women's rights, but it's heavily to show that, hey, women can do whatever the fuck they want, and they don't have to tell you whether they don't have to tell you I'm being erotic here, or I'm being gross here, or I'm trying to be funny. It's just people being artists, and it doesn't matter that they're women. And the Viva La Woman thing is just so appropriate for it, because through it all, it still has that female vulnerability that a lot of people, including other women, like to shun one another for,
Yeah. I'm for woman-loving woman.
Yeah. And lastly, but not least, one of my super biggest influences, in even considering, for me to even started listening to vaporwave in as a whole, it's thanks to this album, which is I don't know how many people have heard it, but Lilacs and Champagne.
Ooh, I love that artwork.
Yeah, this album came out, I believe, in 2012,
Mm.
2011. And this album mixes a lot of like sampling, it mixes a lot of different genres. And I think, had it come out under a different circumstance, I think it would have been a great contender for a vaporwave album in a way. It does a lot of plunderphonics. It adds a lot of elements of like, hypnagogic type sounds. There's a lot of different things, but ironically enough, it's also not aiming to go for like the lo-fi 90s quality that a lot of the vaporwave community has maybe gone for production wise.
Mm.
But yeah, no, this album is great. It's a self-titled album for anybody that's interested in looking at it up. It's Lilacs and Champagne. It's self-titled, and I would say besides that, another two albums that I would recommend, and as far as how I think vaporwave has been influencing and been influenced by those sounds, it's probably like I Monster, A Dense Swarm of Stars, and probably like Brand Van 3000's Glee album, are
Mm.
other albums that like came out well over 20 years ago, close to, and that one came out 10, almost a decade ago, but still they had a lot of imprint and sounds and styles that were going to eventually come at some point.
Mhm. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah. All right. So then, NRL asks, "What's your favorite vaporwave album slash song?"
Ooh, that's a hard one because it always constantly changes. Like for example, like for months on end, like Groovy Kaiju's Still Groovy album was one of the things I constantly had on repeat just because of the fact that how inspiring that album sounds, but not inspiring where like it makes me like I told him last time in the show, his work is not like it does give you a party sense, but it also gives me a sense of like let's push that extra like mile that we can, whether it's working out or whether it's skateboarding or working on something. It makes you feel good towards working towards something. And that album was really constant for me. Another
Mhm.
thing that I've been constantly playing too has been like H2OG by Darian Shields because he was recently on the show.
Mhm.
It may seem to like to some a safe kind of listens or bets because of I've had them on, but I go through people's music continuously while listening to the music I order, and you know it's hard to kind of make a like a predominant you know track my thing, but like NREL, you were one of my big things I listened to last year. Like, I mean, when you were on the show, our first my birthday stream and everything, like, fuck, dude, you really stole the show. Like, you and I click like the whole fucking like you guys are great. And for me to say like one particular song from you is like my favorite, that's kind of would be a disservice to both my fandom towards your work and what your entire body of work is. But Space World 2000, like I know you worked on it for a while, but that album was
Mhm.
another thing that I had heavily on repeat.
Same. I would go on car rides and listen to that album. Um, and feel like I was like in a spaceship.
I
um,
just think that Enreal in like basically iClick as well. Like I tell Genesis this as a joke, but I'm like, you're making all the DDS songs that they either didn't get to make or they didn't know they could make or they forgot to make or
mhm.
they wish they made because like I'm not like I don't know if I don't know. I don't want to get too much into fanboying here, but like
You could.
I think
Oh,
like
wow.
like DDS, I'm a huge fan of both of the like them, like how they and like Keith as well, and like all their contributions to their work. But like so much of either what I clicked us or what NREL is, like it's just I feel even it's even more personal into that, and maybe it's because I have a tighter friendship with both of the, like Will and Nathan than I do with like maybe like Tech and James, but
Mhm.
you know it just feels that much more personal, more than I thought DDS could feel, and that's been the crazy part. So that's why I'm like they kind of feel like sister acts to one another now.
Mhm. I agree. Yeah. And Nathan fucking loves TDS.
I know that. I know that.
Hobo Hobo Larry,
What's that?
420 asks, hey, Codex, do you have 5 Starkle men? I don't know what that means.
Do I have? Hmm.
5 Starkle
I
men.
don't. Oh, I don't know. I don't have it physically.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking about a music album, I don't have it physically because I think I know what you're talking about.
Oh,
But yeah,
yeah.
no.
It's a Gorillas, I think. Or something. I don't know. Never mind.
Oh,
I don't know what
I
it
have a
is.
huge. If it's a Gorillaz thing, I have a huge collection of their stuff. So like, I don't even know entirely what I do or may not have it there. So even looking back at it, but as far as other stuff, like I this week I stopped kind of like ordering records because I've pre-ordered stuff and things, and like whether it be from like Bandcamp or people on Discogs or just like actual like bigger labels, I stopped ordering stuff because I have like a bunch of stuff out. So like even with that, I'm like, wait, I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
Tor-
Hobo Larry says glass or wraps.
Glasser wraps?
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat too on the side. Um, I actually have been doing both recently. Like I have these banana daiquiri Swisher sweets, and I also do water pipes. But I'm not gonna show that off, obviously, because of fucking Twitch being
Mm-hmm.
sphincters, tight ones.
Jesus Christ,
But
yeah. Groovy said earlier that no, nope, Codex is definitely talented and handsome. I just wanted to say that Groovy said that.
oh, that's really sweet.
Yeah.
Um, if you don't mind me reading the question here, I see that Enro's asking what's my least fave drug and my favorite drug.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, favorite drug. It could sound cliche, but like listening to music, I suppose. Um, it really is an enhancement to like any other substance I've ever done. I don't think I would have had as much as great times as I've ever had on any other substance I've ever tried had it not been soundtracked by music. I even try to cater to those kinds of things, whether it's been like having experienced test chemicals or anything like that. And to answer the least favorite, I would probably say um, spice. I don't know. Spice is probably the worst thing I've hated doing.
Spice?
Oh, yeah. That it's like fake weed.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ew.
It's funny that you're like you live in Florida. Yeah. Well, okay, I'll get into that, but to kind of answer Hobo Larry's thing, 5 Starkle Man is a band. Yeah, no, I think I have something on digital. I don't know if it's on my external hard drive that I showed off before, or if it's on the actual old laptop I had. But I think I may have something. I don't know what title release or what, but I may have something. I have a lot of music, but yeah. Well, and going back to the spice thing, like with that, back in 2011, 2010, I wasn't smoking marijuana or doing anything like that at all because I had a job as a mechanic,
Oh,
and I really
wow.
wanted to keep that job and wanted that job, and they drug tested. I was in this whole like because I got myself emancipated from high school kind of thing, and
Mm-hmm.
I was in this kind of like summer program still, even though I kind of also had gotten like a GED and stuff. I qualified to have like a summer work program because I was still underage, and I uh, I ended up working for this mechanic place, and I really loved the job. I was actually pretty fucking happy at that job, and I wanted to keep it enough to where I stopped smoking pot, and I started smoking like spice, that fake weed, and it it was a horrible experience. But I mean, I hate to say this, I don't condone it, but I also don't regret having done that stupid shit either.
Mm-hmm. And you think it's like there's a lot of it in Florida or something? I've never even
There's a lot of
experienced
videos
it.
of people using it in Florida, just because Florida is one of those go-to states to have videos of people doing stuff up.
That's so true, though. Like Florida's a rehab capital, so like, and because we're
Florida.
yeah. Excuse me.
Uh,
Ooh. I really wanted to talk to you about this because Nathan wanted me to like talk to you about it, but 1910-19, let's reminisce about this album that you put in Pacific Plaza. That's
right.
That's like commemorating Econ 2, right?
Yeah,
like
in the overall experience of going to LA.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did Nathan and Will like also like being with you like conjure up any like songs in that album?
Yeah, a good portion of them. Actually, the production of that, I wanted to go towards like, how could I show that I'm obviously influenced by DDS, and how could I show that I'm actually influenced too by like Nathan and Will's work, whether it be Cux, you know, NREL, or whether it be through iClick, any of these other projects that the boys have done. But how can I show all those things while, how could I show all this while also kind of showing what I felt about it? And since the moment that I stepped on a plane going to LA, I started really kind of, you know, I not necessarily sobered up, but I took in the moment, everything. Like if my feet had taste buds, I was even tasting every single step towards LA, you know, just to really get a sense and feel of everything that's happening and going on. And like, even, you know, having been in LA, like I walked to the venue, like I think it was like almost like a 2-mile walk from where I was staying. No, it must have been like a 1.5 miles, because like Alex from Pacific Plaza was fucking nice and kind enough for the first time ever he met me to give me a ride back to my hotel, because my phone was crapping out and I couldn't go to the after party, unfortunately. But you know, I got to experience enough to where I went back home and like I made an entire album based off of the feelings that I went through. Like I went to school for journalism, so I wanted to feel like I could do something that felt like I was reporting back to people what that experience was like without having to actually say anything.
That's awesome. That's so fucking cool. I wish I had that power.
Well,
that's like a power. Like you could like make music and like I don't know, write a piece like that with music. It's like it's like magic.
I mean, not really entirely. I never really talk about it openly, but I have synesthesia. I don't necessarily want to get too much about it, but one of my fucking like cheats, I feel, because I'm a self-taught musician, I don't know fucking like music. Another reason why, even working with people and collaborating with them, I keep a certain type of distance, because if they start talking to me about like music theory and rules and stuff like that, I'm gonna like basically feel like you are probably better off talking to me in a language I haven't spoken before than talking to me about that, because I've been self-taught because of the fact that when I listen to sounds and I listen to things, I see different shapes and colors and things based on that kind of stuff. And that's kind of one of the things that's really helped me out, like even when I'm not actually working on music. And that's one of the reasons why mainly I always have headphones on as well, because some of those things kind of tend to fuck with me when I'm out and about. So
I've been getting a feel that like music theory isn't like important. Excuse me again.
I mean, no, it's fine.
Like it's important, but like it's not like that. Like it's not necessary.
Yeah, I mean, it's important if you're somebody who, for some reason, can't for the life of you understand like patterns and things and understand what, because I hear all this time about like pop structure and everything, and not like in vaporwave, but another type of music, and I always just come back to the consensus of like these people act like the same way that parents act about having children. Like it's some fucking mystery, and it's not. It's like, just give yourself time to get to know what the fuck you want to do. The same way with a child when it grows up, like get to fucking know it, and then maybe you'll know it's a human, and you can treat it differently than you would, like, you know. And that's kind of the thing that I get to with music, where like I feel like people sometimes are like, okay, this has to be in this timing and this has to be in BPM, and like for me it's like, nah, fuck that shit. Like I don't understand it, but I know what some of you guys like because I've listened to enough of the music that I like and that a lot of you guys like, and this is what I feel from it and what I want to make from it. And I've had people message me before like, yo, your album has BPM all over the place, and I'm like, yeah, all right, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, honestly, but cool, I'm glad that you think that that was good, because I'm always self-conscious about also not coming out like, hey, you know, this was so fucking like pre-coordinated, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Alright. So
were you gonna say something?
Yeah, you cosplayed Prince or Princess Bubblegum.
Yeah.
Do you cosplay often? I'm like,
no, I actually don't, and I just this doing streams and doing shows is how I've been getting comfortable with being me physically, you know, because I'm not gonna make this a big long speech or anything, but to those that watch either right now in the stream or in the future, I'm non-binary, you know, I am pansexual. I continuously always tell people when they ask me, what pronoun do you want to be regarded as? I'm still trying to maybe understand or figure that out myself, but it's because it constantly fluctuates for me as to what it is that I feel more strongly inclined or close or connected to, whether it be a feminine aspect, male aspect, or whether I just feel androgynous as a whole. And you know, being that I really hope that this doesn't come across as any form of controversy to anybody here, but for me personally, I understand that biologically I was born as male. It still sometimes makes me feel like I'm not necessarily, you know, I don't feel right in this glove, you know, like if this was the OJ case, they would have acquitted it long ago, because I don't feel like it fits, you know. And I conscious about like things like that, so me doing this show and getting told by people that they either like how things look on me or me doing like cosplay like that, it's just barely given me really the comfort to start wanting to do that kind of thing more, you know. Just because again, I don't really consider how people perceive me physically, just because I don't know what to make of myself still. And that's kind of one of the things I wanted to kind of clear up as a whole for anybody that watches or may watch, because I don't have necessarily like the low self-esteem that somebody's just like, oh no, stop, it's just I genuinely sometimes still don't know how to gauge myself in those ways, because sometimes I'm happy with feeling like I appear one way, or sometimes I am happy with feeling like I appear another way, and sometimes I just utterly, you know, just can't stand myself. So
I feel like I go through that a lot, but thank you for sharing that. I know that a lot of people like struggle with like a identity and like things like that, and that doing this stream that you like, your show that you do, is helping you like get further, or you know, it helps you express yourself more. It's awesome.
Yeah, and you know, one thing I like to put out to people, and just because, you know, for me doing a talk show, another thing that I'm really self-conscious about, or at least aware of, you know, is that I'm doing a talk show in the age of fucking Ellen and Wendy Williams and like Dr. fucking Phil. Like these are the people, like even if I'm doing a fucking show that like has less than 500 people watching a month, like I still feel self-conscious that I don't want people to think that I'm like so like fucking sweet and I'm the nicest person ever, or like I'm gonna like I hate that these people came out with these fucking things, because I think that the platform for talk shows, late night shows, or anything, if utilized correctly, just like music, it could be a nice middle point of which ideas can kind of reverberate towards the bigger, you know, whole of what society or people are and give them an opportunity to make a fucking choice about things. Like that's where I again continue to be at. Like I really want us to, if we're actually gonna draw lines, let's draw the lines really literally in the way where we're like, okay, are you for fucking, total and abrupt of fucking authoritarianism and racism and this kind of shit, or are you willing to understand that yes, some of us don't fucking like a certain type of thing, but you're not gonna bother another. But let's be in unison to figure out that, hey, the rich are fucking us over. The system doesn't want the arts to fucking proliferate because of the fact that the arts give people a reason to think, hey, things aren't black and white. We can do between the middle. Because another thing I've seen specifically here, like in the fucking North American part of the fucking Western hemisphere of the world, is that people draw lines between black and white, and it's like you guys do realize that there's some people that just don't give a fucking shit, right? Like that's not a fucking secret. There's people out there that don't give a shit about those things, and you guys are playing these fucking like big ol', I don't know. They're playing this big ol' like fight of like, oh, okay, this guy doesn't like this or this guy doesn't like. I get it. Some of you guys just don't want people to be so loud and about things, but understand that some of those people are also like anti-racist too. They just don't want to feel like they're following along in big crowds because they want to be unique, Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. That's just kind of the way I feel about some of these things too, because I feel that some people also just bitch out a lot about saying like how they feel about things because they just want to feel that they're unique and they don't want to say like, yeah, I feel that racism is bad, sexism is bad, or this or that,
Mm-hmm.
And only when it comes to them, they're willing to say like, oh yeah, this applies to me. But then they're willing to say things again or do things. And that's kind of another thing where I feel like, if more of us are able to be aware of those type of people, maybe we can also ease up a little on fucking trying to cancel anything that says something fucking stupid.
That's true. Yeah. I feel like you are um like the way that you explain these things, it's like poetic and like, I don't know. I like the way that you put it. That's really educational and great.
Well, it's just because it's no, I don't mean to intercut, but it's just because I personally feel that it's constantly like an irony. Like for example, like I'm gonna bring it up in a bigger spectacle that it's not like vaporwave related, so it's not okay. Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle is a person who spends a lot of his time making fun of like lower income class, uncultured, white, rural Americans and saying like, oh, you guys voted for President Trump. This is your guys' thing, but he's working for me and all of this. And like, he wants to turn around and say, okay, don't watch my show because I'm not getting paid from it. And it's like, at the same time, you're also making fun of people saying that you're making all of this money and that people are stupid enough to vote for the person that's helping you make money. So why do I, a nobody, a motherfucker, a sucker, that somebody like Dave Chappelle would probably look at it and either make a joke of or not even like wince a fucking eyelash at, why do I have to like not watch a show? Fuck him. If he made a wrong move on Comedy Central and stuff, I'm doing a show right now and I'm trying to pay attention to how things are done. If he screwed himself over, he screwed himself over. But for him to make fun of people that were either fooled or were impressionable enough to look for somebody or to look towards somebody that screwed them over, tap dance on their fucking loss, and then for him to tell us, don't watch my show because I'm not making money. It's like, fuck you. And then you go catch COVID with hanging out with Grimes, a person who made $90,000 off of like
God.
the Canadian Arts Foundation, and she lives in LA, married to Elon Musk, who's a multi-billionaire. But we're not going to say anything about them. We're going to talk about other people that, again, they're just low-hanging fruit to cancel and shit. And that's one of the things where, to me, it's just like, are we fucking real about this, or are we just picking fucking teams based on who we either want to be or who we either want to hang out with? Like, because that's another thing that I continuously get really fucking annoyed by, and why I kind of stick aside and I'm just like, all right, you guys are fighting over this again, cool. And why, like, even something like Twitter just fucking like disgusts me, because it's like, yeah, I get it, like, some people are just abruptly out for their own, but this is the thing where I think that fucking like cancel culture is stupid, because there's people that understand that cancel culture exists, and they utilize that aspect of it to also make a cult of personality against themselves. And on that, I actually will be the first time, I don't want to make this, but like, for example, like somebody who is going to be a big controversy thing, but somebody like HKE, who the way that he approaches controversy is the thing where like people aren't either smart enough or either like aware enough because they're being dwindled by these fucking like culture wars to not see that, okay, he's first off making controversy out of things that you guys are dumb enough to see he doesn't care, you guys care about. But he's doing it because there's people out there, because like what you were saying and others agree, cancel culture doesn't exist. It's only going to get more views. That fucking big old thing. Why do you guys think that he fucking like connects so much with Kanye West, or things that Kanye West rips him off delusionally? And like, if people want to throw that out and have him go after me, fine. He made fun of me, and this is one of the big reasons too, for me personally. Like, I don't care about bringing him up because he's one of those same examples of people that I personally always feel like, you know, he's an enigma, because the same way I'm talking about him, I also defend him in that same regard, where I'm like, we shouldn't fucking just be straight to cancel him because he pulled a tantrum during the villain show. We should pull a tantrum over him because he actually was going out of his way back in SoundCloud and liking fucking Fash Wave shit, and who knows if he was being edgy, and none of you guys called him out for it. None of you guys ever actually went out and said, hey, he's liking some neo-Nazi bullshit. Is this because he wants to be edgy? Because he doesn't understand politics. Because if he saw even a connection between like Boris Johnson, Brexit, and Donald Trump, Trumpism, then he definitely doesn't understand politics. He just thinks it's all right and it's all left. And that goes back into where I'm saying that people pick these fucking stupid sides, and they don't even understand that within all of these things, just like in Vaporwave, people get mad. Oh man, it's hypogonic. Oh no, it's future funk. It's VHS. If you guys are gonna be like that about that, be like that about other fucking things, dog. Like, don't just be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna fucking like be like adamant about the styles and sounds of something, and then when a motherfucker says something stupid just because I don't like him, let's cancel him just right out. Let's fucking level the playing field out, and like, let's also make sure that people out there like us, because a lot of us were bullied. A lot of us were either bullied in high school and middle school too. And I understand when some of us say something stupid too, it feels like a personal attack. But again, if some of us know each other well enough, you should understand that some of us may see something online, feel like it reminds us of something personal. It's not for you to come and try to teach us a fucking lesson about how we're fucking, you know, being homophobic or something if I am like of a thing, and then you guys try to make arguments about like shit like, well, you could still be this or that. Like, no, if I'm not dropping an actual slur, I'm not being hateful towards something, yet I'm expressing a disdain for the fucking complacency of something, don't try to make me either a martyr or a fucking like bad guy or villain against all this. It's like, look inward towards what the bigger context is. And especially, I only get into this just because of the fact that Vaporwave is one of these kind of subcultures where even people that have nothing to do with this community are always trying to figure out, is it some critique on fucking Marxism? Is it some critique on capitalism? Is it some this? Is it that? It's like, it's what it, you guys fucking understand it and want it to be. It just kind of goes back down to the bigger essence of the bigger picture is that most people that are making this, that are getting a notion that they've been getting screwed over generationally, you know, are making a joke of the fact that they either still want money, but they know that wanting money is still kind of wrong, and they're trying to make an okay with this. And this is another thing where I come back to, where people are continuously trying to keep each other on check while not realizing that they themselves are just as susceptible to be called into question for those very same type of mistakes or the same type of blind spots, you know?
Yeah. Damn, man. You feel like getting killed for that. I honestly, like, don't know what to say. Like, you said it perfectly. Everything. Wow.
Well, you know, it's just because, again, like, my big thing is not for me. It's for, like, all of you. I'm saying this because, like, if any of you guys watching that may fucking feel something from it, and you have somebody that you guys think that may reverberate for this, I'm doing this for my show, which means I'm doing this for you. Like, her having me on and feeling all this special things about this is one of those things where, like, I feel flattered personally, but again, at the end of the day, my goal is still to want to help all of you guys, make sure that none of you guys get fucking canceled over some stupid shit. If you guys, if I don't like you, then there's a reason I don't like you. And because I hold some of these kind of morals to a point where, like, again, I can tell if you're a misogynist. I can tell if you're a fucking racist or a homophobe and shit. And, you know, personally, and if you're ever on this show, I don't think you're any of those fucking things. If you're a conservative because you think that you want to be greedy as a fucking pig and you think you can make money and others shouldn't or things like that, that's on you. But I'll fight for it in a different fucking way. As long as you're not a racist and you don't think a woman's job's in the fucking kitchen or gay people shouldn't exist, I don't care about that. And me saying these things are, again, for people to realize that we need to take that kind of thing out of our fucking, like, ass and get back into making art to fucking counter those people out there that want to actually cancel all of us as a whole. I don't believe in censorship, but I do believe that right now a lot of us are really liable and susceptible to giving away more than we already have, just because of going far back as 20 years ago, having something like the Patriot Act signed, and even before then, 20 years before then, the Equal Rights Act that gave a path to, like, Rupert Murdoch having Fox News, making all this, like, free speech type of news that really just does nothing but further divide and make people hate each other. And I think if we're having free speech, let's call it out and let's have it be to a point where, like, some of us don't fucking like each other full on out, but we realize that we're in this fight together to either work and be artists and continue to live as artists, and to also make sure that maybe our grandmother won't die if a fucking pandemic happens next time again, and that maybe some dumbasses could have actually worn masks. Because, again, people are that impressionable where people can say, oh, if Donald Trump had said wear masks, they would have still not worn. No, people are followers. We're all followers. We are all followers. I'm pointing at myself, people, so you guys don't think I'm saying I'm not a follower. We're all fucking followers. And if those idiots would have had the right fucking dumbass to tell them to do something, we would not have been as high a stake as we are now. It's like plus 400,000 people. And I only also say this because I want music venues to open up for all of you to get back out there and to fucking make me look like a nobody. I think a lot of you guys are so much more talented than me and have so much more potential than I could ever have. And I just want to keep it alive. So when that pandemic hits, Econ 3 will be the most beautiful thing ever. And we could have more events and we could actually create our own media, like, system that doesn't have to fucking think about, like, are we selling out or not? No, we can actually make a self-sustainable thing if we only realize that we don't have to fucking agree 100,000 fucking % of the time, you know, as long as we're not, again, letting certain ideas make, you know, path. And it's not a censorship. It's a thing that if they're that adamant about their own, like, messages, then they can build their own platform. It's just not our place to give it to them, you know? Oh, come on, you're too nice.
That
You're
was
too nice.
fucking amazing. You know, it has been such a fucking honor to have you here, like, on my stream. Like, thank you so much. Like,
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, you just made it real and fucking killed it. Wow.
I mean, like,
go ahead.
I just want it to be like, if this is going to be like maybe my one and only time I'm ever on a podcast or a show or something, and I hope I really don't feel like I said anything too controversial for your show here, but, like, no. I just really, again, because of, like, this being less for me but more for, like, I want people to know who, not the show, but who I am as a person that's part of the show, who I am as a person. I really hope that this can give a lot of you guys motivation to maybe message us and maybe look towards the show in the coming future, because we have a lot of plans for the show, like, not just during the pandemic but post-pandemic. And I want you guys to all know where I personally stand and where the show will stand going further down the line, and for, again, all of you guys to know that this is a thing where I invite you guys on. This is because I think you guys only further enhance me than I think that I'm only being opportunistic for any of you guys.
That's amazing. I mean, now we have like a few more minutes. Like, let me see. Do you want to be asked like one more question, if that's all right?
You know, you can ask me whatever you want, or whether it's the audience or anything. I don't mind.
Yeah. What do you like? What are your aspirations, and like, what do you want taken out of like sights, sounds, and conversations, and everything you just said today?
That all the systems that we have are not the end all be all. That as much as we all want to play team players to for like a certain form of philosophy, system, party, whatever, we could create our own. You know that, right? Like all of you guys do know that. Like shit, like right now, whether it be George Clanton with 100% electronica, with what Rosewood's doing, with what a lot of the labels are doing, if we really got together in the right way, you guys do realize we could potentially make a creative, artistic network equivalent to that of like the fucking news networks, right? Like if the Equal Fairness Act only existed again for like Rupert Murdoch and Fox News too, we could also use that to our advantage. And this is another thing where like I'm hoping that a lot of us can maybe like meet or know somebody. This is a thing that I feel is important, but to know somebody who may already be involved in law or maybe doing law that likes vaporwave and the arts enough, because we also need to have a time and a point where we have a lawyer on standby for the equal like free rights and free of usage thing because of the art that we're making. I think that if we were ever to get down to court and we were in unison enough, we could beat this motherfuckers in what we're doing. Like the samples and a lot of the things we're doing, we could actually have pretty good standings in courts if we're ever to come to that. But we just need to be united enough to realize that another big reason, and it may seem crazy to some of you, that why they are interested in that is because they're trying to silence and drown out noises. It's not in the interest of any system, of any country, of any political ideation whatsoever, whether it's socialist, communist, whatever. It's never in the interest of them to figure or know that the arts may be in unison, to give people from the ground roots, because the arts only exist to inspire any of us that are poor, broke, or rich to know that we could, like, and I mean rich spiritually, to know that we could do something, and they don't want that. Any of these systems, they don't fucking want that, whether it's Russia, China, Japan, any of these, they don't want any of these things. So like again, the only thing that I feel could only work and happen is if, again, within vaporwave we're already becoming an example in other ways through to other people. I see Pitchfork and Consequence of Sound and all these other places write articles about vaporwave, but like they're not catching on the sense that, again, if a lot of these types of people in this community, we gathered and joined well enough and we supported each other well, we could create our own kind of system that doesn't need to hang off of the fact that, oh, are we going to have Adult Swim? Adult Swim's a nice stepping stone. So is Uprock, so is Consequence of Sounds or Pitchfork, but fuck them. We don't need them. Some of them did not believe in this entire fucking movement years ago, and now they want to feel like they're in on this. No, you know, and that's why I love George, I love Lindsay, I love what all of them are doing at 100% Electronica. I'm not going to be a stand for them because there's certain things I personally would do different, but I do think that a lot of us owe respect and a lot of like at least a little acknowledgement toward George Clanton and 100% Electronica for approaching their label and the way they're doing things differently than what I thought others were doing before them. And this is where I think we should take from that, and maybe from my show and, you know, Pacific Plaza, you yourself, and we need to coalesce together to create something not even just for vaporwave, but the arts in general as a whole.
Fuck yes. Fuck yes. That's like, I'm down and I'm for it, and that's what I hope to do and achieve. Well, we're at the last 2 minutes. What do you want to promote? What do you want to... Is there any streams coming up?
We have a new episode happening on the 23rd. It will be probably right after... It will probably be right after the Neo Gaia stream, because I don't want to be in competition towards them, and I also would like them to watch. But we're still trying to figure things out. I want any of you guys that have ever watched Sight, Sounds, and Conversations, or know anybody that has, to, you know, keep us informed about what your thoughts are and what you guys feel about the show, because we're getting towards a point where we're going to be looking towards having financial support from you guys, and it's only to do even bigger and better things than we're already doing, and it's not any other thing than that. And I just want to have a bigger input on that, because again, for us, it's more of bringing you all entertainment and bringing you something first, and then asking for a form of compensation later. And the compensation just deals more with, I have co-producers and contributors, whether it be Sleep Pattern, whether it be Will, or other people that I personally have tried to pay them, or whenever I get a chance to, and I would like to pay a lot of other people. I will also let you know that with me saying that, it doesn't mean any of you guys interested in being performers may necessarily be getting paid or anything. So you guys saying, hey, I want to perform, I want to be, that's, if we are doing this on the more of the staff behind the scenes type thing, so there's no misunderstanding with any of you guys watching. But besides that, I have probably a surprise stream that I may be doing on my own Discord soon. And I'm only doing it there because I am going to be playing music that I know Twitch and YouTube would probably not let me play, because they don't like stuff that isn't going to pay the record labels, not the artists, because they don't want to pay the artists. They want to pay the record labels. So with that, it's been again a pleasure, and an honor to have you.
It's been an honor.
And I mean to have.
It's been a fucking honor to like have you, and I love you, man. Like, I love Sight, Sounds, and Conversations so fucking much.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I love what you're doing, and I fucking appreciate this. I'm gonna also promote my stream. With next week, I'm gonna be with Young Chuck, so I hope to see you guys there.
Hey!
Yeah, he's a funny egg music guy, and I really can't wait. And yeah, that's awesome.
Anybody that's on your show is gonna be great.
Thank you so fucking much. Thank you everyone who showed up. You guys are awesome. I'm gonna actually raid Picari online because they have a stream. So, sorry Nathan, I already had this planned. So, have a great night. Have a great
later, everybody.
Sunday.